But in most synagogues, you know, kid comes home from school and says, Mom, Dad, Hebrew school sucks, I don't want to go. Dad says, it sucked when I went, it sucks now. I went, you go, after bar mitzvah, you're free. Now, the truth is that the Reform synagogues have a better record of keeping kids after, you know, bar and bar mitzvah. And actually, the conservative synagogues are doing better because ProStar is doing a great job of bringing kids in. And we're kind of keeping kids around for longer than we thought, but far too many kids basically are lost. So we've been thinking, we've tried to do some stuff to make things better in partnership with synagogues, because any federation that tries to do something about Jewish education doesn't work with synagogues is just stupid. We're not involved with you to get you to give gifts to CJP. Allow me to be perfectly clear. We are partners with you because the whole future of the Jewish people depends on you, and we are committed to that. We have never said that give money to CJP, it's a quid pro quo, or anything like that. You should give money to CJP. I would never discourage you from doing that. But it's a different question than what we need to do to strengthen the synagogue. It's a different question. So there are a couple of things that seem obvious. When a parent says, if a kid comes home and says, Mom, Dad, I'm in 8th grade, they're trying to teach me Shakespeare, Julius Caesar, all the guys with tights. I mean, I don't want to do this. It sucks. I don't want to study Shakespeare. So what does Dad say? Dad says, I didn't like it much when I was your age either, but let me tell you something. This is important stuff. If you want to be considered a civilized human being in this world, you will not say that Shakespeare sucks. Number one, it turns out that there's huge wisdom in this. You don't know it now, but look at our bookshelves. Every one of Shakespeare's plays is on our bookshelves because there is wisdom in this. So why is it that the parent says it sucked when I went, it sucks now? On the other hand, when they're dealing with Western civilization and culture, they say it's got meaning and value, you ought to pay some attention to it. And the reason is that when you left Shakespeare in 8th grade, you went to high school, and if you were lucky like me, you found a teacher who made Shakespeare amazing. And if you missed Mrs. Levy at the Bronx High School of Science, well, maybe you met Professor Quinn at City College, and he was amazing. Professor Quinn was amazing. Shakespeare. If you never had Professor Quinn, if he's still alive, you ought to find him, and an amazing Shakespeare teacher. But any kid who studied Talmud or Chumash or Hebrew language in an afternoon school, he never goes back. If you're lucky, he'll end up going on Birthright, or she'll go on Birthright and then come back and take some Jewish studies at college, which could also be amazing. But generally speaking, that doesn't happen. So what we said was, you know what? Let's get every Jewish adult in Boston to be an educated adult, to be Jewishly learned. Not like, you don't have to be run by Maimonides, but you should know vaguely when Maimonides lived, like the millennia that Maimonides lived, or something, or at least we might not be geniuses at Shakespeare, but we sort of know who the Queen of England was when Shakespeare's plays were being put on, and we sort of know what the background was, and we know something, and mostly on Jewish subjects we know nothing. So what we said was, first of all, we tried family educators, which you had, and which worked fine, but didn't quite make it. And then we saw a thing called the Wexner Heritage Program, which was all over the country, 20 leaders in each community, 2 years of Torah, Talmud, Jewish history, Jewish philosophy, and alienated, assimilated, high-status young families taking this thing because Wexner offered them a trip to Israel, free trip to Vail, great meals when you're studying, all of that good stuff, and lots of people took it, and it changed their lives. Not because of the great food of the trip to Vail, but because they had the greatest teachers in the world teaching them. So I went to the people at Wexner, I said, let us use the name. We have the teachers you use, they all live in Boston. They all live in Boston. They're available to everybody. We'll put this in every synagogue in town, and we'll take this idea of an elite leadership that's educated, and we'll make every Jew in Boston an elite, educated Jew. And they said, I think that you should have stopped your drug use earlier in your college career, because this will never work. We came back and we started NAIA, and guess what? 2,500 Boston Jews have been through this program, and it actually makes a difference. And so we know that can work. And you go to any rabbi and you say, Rabbi, why did you become a rabbi? And 2 out of 3 times they're either going to say it was a youth group experience or an intensive Jewish summer camp experience, okay? And yet, in almost every synagogue in Boston, 5 to 10% of the kids go to intensive Jewish summer camp, and 100% of the kids go to afternoon school. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make any sense. What's the point of that? I mean, why? I mean, afternoon schools, sometimes work. It's an exception when they work, we have to say. I'm not asking for the elimination of Hebrew schools, not at all. They can do great things. But if our goal is to get every kid to go to Hebrew school, our similar goal should be to get every single kid to go to intensive Jewish summer camp. So when you have an intake process for a young family, and you say to the young family, do you ever think about day school? It's tough to raise Jewish kids in this society. Day schools would give them an advantage, because after all, they're getting top-flight secular educations. Think about giving them a top-flight Jewish education. And they go, for all kinds of good reasons. No, we want our kids to grow up to be good Americans, and it costs a lot of money, and there's all kinds, and these are legitimate. These are all legitimate discussions. Say, okay, you can't do day school. I understand that. I want your commitment as you sign up for this synagogue to give your kids a couple of years of intensive Jewish summer camp. I want your commitment. Because that's not impossible, and it's not too expensive, and you can send your kids to camp Wachahuchi anyway, and so why not send them to a Jewish summer camp? Now, look, this is a tough discussion. I have this discussion with young families who I'm asking for money for CJP, and I'm not their rabbi, and I'm not their school, but I feel like duty-bound to tell them that they ought to give some thought to how they're raising their kids and what kind of choices they're going to make. So, I mean, I think that the integration